Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Ask an Expert. We are joined here by Kyle and Jen Carter, and they are actually not in the same location, which might be a first for Ask an Expert. Jen is in beautiful Alaska. She says she's stuck there. We're not so sure about that, but she is there. And we are going to be talking tonight about the upcoming eventing competition at the Paris Olympics. So I can't wait to get both Jen and Kyle's input on the team competition, the individuals that are going to be there, and just the overall Olympic structure and how that competition kind of impacts the eventing community as a whole. So I don't want to spend too long on the preamble, but Jen and Kyle, thank you guys so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. And if you are attending live, as always, please feel free to put any questions that you have for Jen and Kyle in chat, and I will relay those to them. And then we'll just start with the questions that we received in advance from Red IQ members, kind of as a good starting point for this conversation. And Kyle, I'll let you start a conversation off. How is the eventing competition structured at the Olympics, and how does it differ from the competitions that we see on a day-to-day basis?
So the big thing is now at these competitions, World Championships, Pan Ams, and Olympics, we actually have a team component. So you have your individual competition going on, and from the individual competition, the countries have put forward their top riders, and they get a cumulative score that actually goes to a team medal as well as an individual medal. After the team medals are divvied out, the individuals that are in the top 25 go back in and show jump a second round that determines what their individual placing will be. So your individual gold medalist could be from one country, your team could be from a different. And on that, the countries that are, they're putting forward riders, you do keep that in mind, that what you really want to go to the Olympics on is you want to go on a really good horse, but the show jumping, because there's 2 rounds, you want to see horses that just are allergic to the rails. So it's pretty, it's just a very different, you don't think of our sport as being a team sport other than the partnership of the rider and the horse. And in this, you actually are really weighting how do the countries fare against each other in their preparation for developing actual programs. And so when I wrote at the Olympics, I remember we sat through a thing on funding, because funding is always a big part of it. And they said funding doesn't come from individual medals, it comes from team medals. So all the countries that are throwing money into it, like New Zealand is very heavily funded, they're wanting team results. If they have an individual result, they celebrate it. But what they're really looking for is a team result, because it means you have a program that is actually guidable, producing a group of riders that are able to compete. So it's a little different that way. It still follows the same. There'll be 2 days of dressage, I think, at the Olympics, then the cross country, then the show jumping on the last day, and the show jumping rounds after the jog will be actually on the same day, usually taking place about a couple hours apart. On that, you also then have an order that you put your riders in, which matters. So because there's only 3 riders allowed at the Olympics, this is different than the World Championships and the Pan Ams. Because it's a team of 3, usually you put your strongest cross-country rider first, and you're most likely to win the competition last, okay? So as an individual. Now, because there's only 3, I don't think it actually structures out the same way as it used to be, because it used to be that you had 4 riders, and you had 3, you'd hope the first 3 would put up a good result for the team, and then you could set your last rider off on the course to go for an individual medal. So your first rider was usually the strongest cross-country rider. Your last rider was your, person that could potentially win the whole thing. So that hopefully you had a good team medal, already in the bag on cross-country day. And so the last rider, you could say, go for it. Or your last rider would be considered a cleanup rider, where you knew that under pressure that they needed a result, they would go out and and be able to bring something home. If one of the earlier riders had trouble, you could depend on that last rider. Like all the positions matter, but those first and last really matter at like a team of 4, which is what we see at the World Championships. At this, because you have 3, and you only have 3 that should count, you need all 3 to perform. So it adds an extra bit of pressure to the whole competition, which is really awesome. But it also means that every rider really has to go out, and I think every rider, every team goes for it. There's no holding back and calculating. And then on that, a lot of people are really pissed that there's only 3, and I actually get that. I love the team of 4 because it really sets up sacrifice from an individual medal for, maybe a team medal. So it's really cool because there's a lot of calculating going on and orchestrating that the rider gets before they go out. But with a team of 3, what it does do is it allows the weaker nations that don't have huge resources and huge groups of riders to actually campaign a little bit more on equal footing. Because if you think about it, they've taken away opportunity. And so now you've only got 3. So a country that can maybe say produce 3 top riders and horses and can afford to do that, like Japan comes to mind, they can actually hold their own toe to toe with a country like, France or England or Australia, and Japan's strong. So now I'm not saying they're weak, but they don't have maybe the same depth. So it actually works to the favor of the lesser, the powerhouses, less powerhouse countries, whereas it doesn't help. Or like countries like England, you could have a roster of probably 8 people that could go in and stand up and compete for their country. So it makes it so everything that they do on the weekend matters, which can catch them out even on with the top riders that they have.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's kind of cool though that we're giving these countries that don't have that deep well of riders to be pulling from an opportunity to really be competitive. I know that there's some cons of having a smaller team, but I think it's a big pro for sure. Jen, how would you equate each phase in the Olympics in each phase? Wow, my words. To what level of competition? Like, is the dressage test a 5-star equivalent test, or how would you kind of think about the dressage, the cross country, and the show jumping in those terms?
So this year I was reading up on it all, and I mean I know most of it, but just to make sure I was clear, they are doing a 5-star test, but it is specific for the Olympics. The test is only written for the Olympics. It will only be ridden at the Olympics. I think it's a 4-minute test, so they make it shorter because they are trying to fit the dressage all in on one day. And then just really quick to touch on what Kyle said about the 3-rider process. My understanding is the reason they went to that originally is because the Olympic Committee will only allow, I think it's 65 horses in the whole competition. And so by taking out the 4th rider for the team, they actually can include more countries, which is what they're trying to do, is make it more of a worldwide competition. So just, I wanted to kind of put that out there. That is, I believe, why they went to that originally. So anyway, so the test is the 5-star test. The cross country is actually a 4-star short cross country test from what I understand. And this particular course is just over the minimum distance that is required. And then the show jumping, Kyle might have to answer this. I want to say it's a 4-star, but it might be a 5-star.
I think it's back up to a 5-star in the show jumping. And certainly it might not be as impactful in one round as it was at the World Championships a few years ago, but I think the show jumping is tough because when they make the cross country the way they're gearing it, where it's shorter and say that's not a 5-star, they often bump up the show jumping to kind of, make it a little bit more of a test. So.
And is it the same course for both the team and the individual show jumping round?
Well, yeah, because the individuals they do both rounds. So the first round is team, and everybody rides in that. Even if you're not going to make it into the afternoon, everybody show jumps in the morning. And then then only the top 25 come back for the next round. And those guys all will ride a different course, probably slightly varied. And they all ride the same one. So everybody rides the morning course that's made it that far. And then on the last one, everybody that's in the top 25 will ride that.
Got it. And have you heard any previews of what to expect from either the cross country course or the show jumping course? And is the show jumping on grass or sand? Kind of what can we expect from those phases? Kyle, I'll let you start, and then Jen, you can get on from there.
The show jumping and dressage will be taking place on the same footing that they're using for the pure dressage and pure show jumping. So you're on a prepared surface. It'll be some sand and fabric and whatnot. And it'll be probably the best footing you could possibly jump on, because when the pure show jumpers go in there, they're jumping 1.60 meters. Those horses need to have real proper footing. And so rarely do you see that ever being consequential anymore. And then they will work the footing over and over and over again to make sure it's as consistent as possible. And the same with the pure dressage. The warm-up and the competition will take place on the same footing. Usually they put in, multiple rings to kind of accommodate that. And so then on the cross country, it's run on grass. It's an incredible site that they're riding at in Versailles. Versailles. I've been screwing around with this so much because I can't wait to get over there and really annoy the French people by calling it Versailles. When they go out on cross country, there's going to be it's a flatter area. It's on a like a very park-like setting. So there's going to be a lot of artificial mounds. The French designer who designs that, it'll be very twisty, and this will set on big strides. So you've got to be able to get up over the jump and then, on a mound, and then get in big steps down to that narrow that's coming away from it, probably to a corner afterwards, that sort of thing. So he's not known for making it easy, even though it's going to be short. And then there's going to be a lot of jumps in a short period of time, which will push the time to being more difficult.
Super interesting. And Jen, before we jump over to talking about the teams themselves, we haven't really touched on the traveling reserve. Can you talk a bit about what that role is? That just seems like the really hard position to be in. And kind of what are your guys' thoughts on that?
It'd be terribly difficult because they have to be there with their horse at the ready the whole time, with a fairly good chance that they aren't going to be able to compete. So that's really hard because all these riders are so competitive. They work so hard to get here. And yes, you want success for your teammates and your team, but how hard is that to stand in the sidelines and be ready, waiting, and not get to go? So they have to have their horses there. They do jog their horses up at the first horse presentation. There's a 2-hour window where they could be substituted in if for some reason a horse didn't get through the first jog. And then they just have to be there waiting all week, or all weekend, because they could be called upon at any point and they have to be ready to go. And then the hard part is if they actually do get subbed in, they cannot compete for an individual medal. They can only apply towards the team score. So it's a really tough situation. And I think this year is marginally better because the horses are in France, so the trip hasn't been so awful. But I know for Tokyo, poor Tammy Smith, she had to travel over, put her horse through all that, do all that. And then, really just the traveling itself was so hard on the horses. She really couldn't do much the rest of that year with them. So, the reserves, maybe will have a shot to stay over and do something in Europe this fall or whatever, but the trip isn't as hard. So, but it's still such a tough spot to be in.
Totally. And sorry, one point of clarification before you add on to that, Kyle. So they could sub in, if they don't ride the dressage, they could sub in for cross country or show jumping. So they could do just a show jumping round?
Yes. So there is a whole scoring system and it is very confusing. But yes, the way they have it structured now is they can sub a horse in for a different phase at a big penalty. Okay. I think if they just need to sub somebody in, it's 20 penalties automatically added to the team score for cross country or show jumping. But now where it gets interesting is if a rider is eliminated on cross country for, say, stops or a technical or even a fall of rider, they can actually substitute another horse in for show jumping. But now that incurs, I think it's 200 penalties. So it's just kind of all crazy when you look at the scoring system. But yeah, so the horse can be subbed in at any point. They can't, I will clarify from my understanding, they cannot be subbed in due to a poor performance. It has to be either a veterinary issue or something else, but it cannot be that, oh my God, that horse did a bad dressage test, so we're going to put this other horse in for the rest of it. They cannot do that. Clear as mud?
Honestly, you explained it really well. I'm inclined to ask a lot more questions on that, but in the interest of time, I'm going to keep us moving forward. Okay, so let's jump over to the team element here, which is very unique to this competition in the eventing world. Let's talk about which teams that you guys think are the ones to watch. Like what ones are going to be most competitive, do you guys think? Kyle, if you want to take this one to start.
Well, Jen and I were talking about this earlier, even though we no longer live in the same state, apparently. We came up with a list of, looks like 10 teams that could be competitive. So oddly enough, there's very little chance that you're going to see there's a couple teams you just hope they're going to go well enough. But in general, the group of riders that are coming here in the countries, it's looking really strong. I think that to Jen's point of the subbing and stuff, we're going to put up a link, I believe, so people that want to understand the craziness that is the scoring. You can go to the link and
chat.
see what that. Okay, perfect. And so these are the teams that I think are going to function in there, as Jen and I have discussed, but like Japan, USA, Belgium, Great Britain, Switzerland, New Zealand, France, Ireland, Germany, Brazil, and Australia. Which sounds like, well, boy, you're not doing a very good job picking. Jen and I will discuss, I think, who are most likely to succeed are. But I think that you have this big of grouping because they've reduced it to 3 horse and rider combinations, because it opens up, like Japan. It's actually they've got an excellent program. They were really unfortunate not to win a medal at their home games in Tokyo. They've really put a lot behind it. They did just get qualified because of a drug testing for a Chinese horse, because remember, all these countries have to qualify. So they did. These riders have been working individually to get themselves ready for this, where their national funding had been cut. So they actually might benefit from that, because they're riding some really, really good horses. And with 3 of them, if they have the right weekend that they can have, I think they should be batting right in there in the top 5 placings. But let's say in our top sort of, I'm not going to go through the gold, bronze, and silver, because we'll do that in a minute. But USA has a very good team. That's an excellent group of riders. Belgium has come on very strong under their new system that they've put in place in the last 2 years. And they've got a rider that's coming off a 5-star win recently. She's married to Kai Steffenmeyer, who is actually he's in charge of their team. He's a German rider who rode very successfully for Germany, and he's done an excellent job putting together a program that has brought through several good riders, including his wife Laura, who's an incredibly good jockey and very competitive. So Belgium, although they've been weak historically in the sport, they're actually looking very, they're coming in quite strong. Great Britain is coming with, you've got the top 3 riders in the world showing up with them. And at the moment, their program, for a long time, they had the best riders in the world, and they weren't really getting traction as team competition. But since Christopher Bartle's sort of taken over with Dickie Waygood, who's actually involved with Ride IQ, they've done an incredible job bringing success to their program, and melding those good riders into a team unit, which is always the difficult thing. Is these riders that ride individually and compete against each other, is getting them to agree in how they're going to perform as a group. Switzerland looks pretty good. They've got a couple of really good horses and riders on there that they could step in, and I don't think they're probably on the podium, but if everything goes the right way for them, it could happen. New Zealand's bringing in the best riders in the world. Two of them, I think they're a little weaker in this session than they've been in the past. France always sort of steps up at the team competitions. It's funny because they don't always show up with the individual riders in the regular, like you don't see them winning badminton and those sorts of things, but they do a really good job showing up on the day, and they're in front of the home crowd, which is going to help them a lot. And they're very familiar with the course designers' courses and the way they're going to lay that out. So that'll really help to their, go to their advantage. And they have got some really good riders and really good horses. It's not that they're not winning badminton and Burley because they're lacking this power for it. They just don't seem to prioritize that as much. Ireland is coming in with a strong group of riders that has been performing admirably. Germany is obviously a huge powerhouse. They just need to get their cohesiveness going. And Brazil's coming in with a really strong team. They've got William Fox Pitt, has taken over coaching them now, and even without him, they were very good. So I'm thinking that they probably are going to at least be more organized, which is always a big part of any country. But in South America, organization is often their biggest detriment. They're brave, tough riders, though. And then Australia's coming off a silver medal at the last Olympics, and they have an interesting group of riders there, but they're all very competent. And one of them, another actually Ride IQ coach, Shane Rose, is coming off a huge injury recently, but he is just so desperate to perform. He's got himself back in shape way before anybody would have expected him to actually be put on the team. So that's I think they look quite strong. But I look at the whole group of it, and yes, I mean, everybody expects Great Britain to win, but I just don't think it's going to be that easy, because I think any little blip, you no longer can depend on that fourth rider, and any little blip is going to put people into a place of not being competitive. So, Jen?
With that being the case, yeah, Jen, do you have anything to add to that?
No. I mean, unless we're going to do what our medal picks are for the team, I think he covered it pretty well.
Okay, we'll definitely get there. But with it being such, like, you're walking a tightrope this whole competition, because you're 3 riders, 3 scorers, like everything really matters. Do you guys think that like really impacted the selection process for the team in a way that it hasn't in the past? Was that different? Did you I guess you guys can probably mostly opine on the US and Canada, the way those were chosen, but were they looking for something different than they maybe have in the past?
I think so. I think that historically in the past, the stronger nations have always given, with that 4th spot, maybe given a up and coming rider or somebody without a little mileage that chance to kind of get in the team situation. Well, I think that's gone now. You can't, with only 3 riders, you need to send the people that are going to try and perform the best and that can perform under pressure, because the pressure they feel in this format is unbelievable. So, I mean, that's my feeling. I do think it's changed the selection process greatly. Kyle?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's complete. I mean, Jen's spot on. So first of all, soundness is an absolute priority. It always has been a priority, but you can't afford to lose a horse. So they've got to be, you're looking at, when the selectors are choosing these things, they're looking at super sound horses. The second thing would be the horses that they're choosing. The show jumping history is so important. Like some of these horses that, when Jen and I were talking about this earlier, I mean, some of these horses have gone a couple of years with like 1 rail. Like they're just exceptional. And they had to choose that because of that. And then riders that you can depend on, knowing that you can just say, you're going to get this done, in no matter what this is going to be, you're going to put effort into accomplishing this, and horses that are going to follow them along with it. So like an interesting one would be Carolyn Powell, who is a reserve for New Zealand. She just won badminton on that horse. What country could leave a badminton winner off? Well, because the cross country is a little bit less, it's not as big, it's not as long, it's not as, it's going to be tough in a different way. They took that horse, who's a really good horse with an exceptional rider with tons of experience and someone that you can really depend on. And they chose to leave her on the side and put 3 other New Zealand riders on there. One that I don't think it's like a, oh my God, shock, but it just says something about the processes. There's a lot more thinking going on than would have been apparent, I think, previously. And you can see that Yasmin for Great Britain is also a reserve. Well, she's our reigning world champion. She won the last outing for Great Britain, and she was second at Kentucky, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that right, Jen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Third.
I mean,
no, sorry. Tom McEwen was second. She was third.
Right. So how do you leave that? How do you leave that off? World champion. Well, you had to, because she's had some blips. Not that Tom McEwen hasn't as well, but they're really having to. They're making, like, the thought process. It would have been painful to be a selector for this competition because of all the stuff you have to take in. Basically, you want perfect, and God knows we don't have perfect.
Yeah. Wow. It is really wild to think about that. How much does the team dynamic play into this? And how is that really a factor in the outcome? Does it really change the whole feeling of the competition for each rider? Kyle, I'll let you go first, and then Jen, you can add on.
Oh, it plays a huge factor in it. You don't want some jackass there that's a great rider that just spoils it for everybody else because they're just destructive in their nature. And that, you see that there's riders out there that are top riders that you would never want to put on a team or be on a team with. And so the job of being put on a team is you have to be able to get along with people. You have to be able to step away when it's a better idea to step away so you don't create conflict. And your job is to give information to all your other teammates that's beneficial to them. And sometimes there's people that just have that, they're too individually focused. And so when that comes up, they just can't stop themselves. They create drama, they create friction, they compete well in that situation because of it, but it destroys the dynamics amongst the rest of the group. And I mean, having ridden on teams and having coached teams, I promise it plays into a huge part of actually picking what kind of rider you're going to put on there. So, and we know a lot of these people individually, and some of them are on reserve spots, and you're like, well, I can kind of understand that because they're not the sort of people you'd want to be in a team situation with, and under pressure and all of that. And so it's a really funny thing because it's basically like a strong marriage for about 3 weeks preceding, and then putting it all on pressure and having all the in-laws in the house all for 3 days. And you're supposed to make it all, through Thanksgiving dinner without having people swearing at each other and throwing things. And that isn't everybody's strength, and you have to be, if you're an antagonistic type person, you have to find a way to not be that person in that environment. Like I fortunately am flying over there with a couple of Ride IQ members I teach John Henry, and I'm flying over with his dad, and we're going to go watch. And one of my friends that's riding there was like, it'll be perfect because the team's going to be better off with me distracted by hanging out with you than having me around them. And I mean, that's a maturity thing to know who you are and know when it's good to be in there and when it's not good to be in there, And so it absolutely makes a huge difference what kind of person you are and what kind of person's going.
So you said that like some people might be like a reserve person, like a person who on a traveling reserve might be somebody who doesn't work as well with the team. Aren't they kind of in it anyway though? Like is that really, like, how does that factor in?
They are in it, yes. I mean, they're in the barns, but I think it's just a different a different way of interacting when it's the three that are actually competing for the team. And you have to have people that are willing to work together, because really the team competition is first and foremost. You cannot go in there as an individual minded person, because it is about you, your teammates supporting, being there. And I think there definitely is thought process going into selection on that, exactly, personality. You got to have someone isn't going to go in and disrupt and try and make themselves better at the expense of you, because it cannot work that way.
Totally. And Jen, before we jump over to the individuals and kind of who we think is going to be the pairs to watch there, what is your podium pick for the teams?
No. Don't do it.
No. I get to go first.
No, you go after we do the individuals.
Really?
I think we do go through the individuals, and then we pick our team, then we pick our individuals, because otherwise you're giving away too much. And you can pick first. It's fine. On the team thing, I will say the other part is the reserve rider has a really important role in this type of competition, in that they can go out, they can analyze, they can help they can be assisting in management, they can be assisting in, they might have time to go watch someone do some dressage that they can be like, you might try more angle there. Like, these are still top riders and you want to make use of them. So like the ideal type of person that's in that position would be someone like Colleen Loach, who's there for Canada. She's the alternate. She's not the alternate because of anything other than they had to make a choice, and they made a choice that she's not on the team. But she has such a great personality and demeanor. She's going to be someone who dissipates and gets rid of negative energy. And she'll be someone that on like cross country day could be out watching and call and be like, hey, this combination's riding like this. And you want to use people like that to benefit the team. So sometimes that reserve rider, it's a tough position to be in, but the right person in that position can help the team immensely. So I think there is a factor of that. Like, if they have a really good sense of humor and they don't get alarmed, and then if they're in around this group and they're not resentful about it, they can really benefit the riders that are riding on the team. And a lot of times in these situations, on the backside, people are like, ooh, it didn't show up on the scoreboard, but that person really helped things, kind of go along. So that's important to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys comment a bit on, to the extent that you have like inside knowledge on this, how have the US and the Canadian teams been preparing over the last couple of weeks? Like, what did travel look like? Do you happen to know like when they did travel over there, or what they've been doing at all?
I only know the Canadian horses flew over last week. I guess same with the Americans, but other than that, Kyle would know more than me. I've been out of it.
So Canada had one horse already in England. Mike Winter's horse was in England. So they all flew over, and he shipped over last week to France, and they've been based over there doing training camp. I actually just talked to him earlier today, and they were loading up to ship to the site this morning. Whatever, he's in France. So I think it was this morning when I was riding, I was talking to him because he was showing me the fantastic outfits that they get to wear. And then the Americans will be based somewhere else in France doing the same thing. And it's the four of them. And then they'll all be working every day on, the dressage. They have gallops. They go to like proper gallops. And so someone for the teams, scouted all these spots out. And I don't know where the individuals were, because honestly, we get kind of busy doing our normal life. And then also this is it's one of those situations that because you want to be there, like I wanted to ride there. It kind of almost a little bit like rejection, where you're kind of, not like they rejected me, I had to withdraw my horse. And so it's a bit like being rejected when you ask someone for a date and then you don't really want to go and hang out and talk to them. So I'm not like, it's not an individual thing, but I didn't follow it as closely as I would have had been in it up until the lead up. I would have been on all the calls. I pulled out early enough to not do that. So my knowledge in that way is sort of more general rather than specific. But basically, every team would have gone over to somewhere in France, rented a barn. Some of the teams would have rented barns together, but it's very separate. And then they use the facility, and they do everything prepping, and you're creating a bubble. And in that bubble, you're trying to create this sense of safety and power and confidence. And that's a little bit why you're doing it. You're not just going to because it's a nice place to go and ride. You're going because you're trying to create unity amongst everybody. And sometimes they go and they'll send people, they'll be like, okay, so now you've ridden, now you have to go away, and like, so an example of that would be like Leslie at his Olympics that he won in Athens, Leslie Law. He got there and his groom rode the horse until the last minute when the groom could no longer ride the horse. Leslie would go to the ring every day, and Yogi, who was the team coach, went to the ring and he'd help her with it a little bit. They just trotted around and worked it. They didn't do anything. And basically, Leslie would stand there and people would come up and be like, are you not going to ride him today? He'd be like, nope. And then the next day they'd be like, well, when are you going to get on? He's like, well, I guess when they tell me I can get on him. Because they said, and he said it, he's like, the thing is, I would have gone on and started schooling him and drilling on him. He already knew everything, but I wouldn't have been able to stop myself. And Leslie's not exactly like a high energy, nut job, but he knew that it wasn't going to be the best thing for the horse. So they just worked the horse nice and relaxed. And then at the last, when it finally was that the riders could know, that the rider had to start riding the horse, which would have been probably 2-3 days before the jog, then Leslie got on and did his part. And the horse, of course, was all relaxed and soft, the same way that you would like them to be. But sometimes as riders and as any athlete, you get a bit like, but if I can just fix this one thing, and sometimes fixing that one thing breaks 3 other things and loses marks. And so there's that stuff's going on this whole time. Like, it is so cool to see the dynamics when you're involved in it, because you watch people and you just see them like energy just going the wrong direction. And it's fun to watch when it's not your team, but that's what they're all doing. They're all specific sites creating their environment, basically.
It's super interesting. I can't imagine being Leslie's groom leading up to that. I would have been like, that is too much pressure.
Well, and she knows the horse, and she knows she knows how to keep him happy. And that's the thing, is you want to keep your horse, your partners happy. And so that's however you do that,
Yeah, totally. Okay. So Jen, tell us, let's dive into some of the individual pairs. Who are the ones that you think are to watch?
Oh, wow, there's a lot. So I think the obvious ones are going to be Roz Canner and Lordship's Gruffalo. I mean, won badminton last year, won the European Championships last year, seems to be unstoppable. And then there's, any of the Brits, like Laura Collette is an interesting one to me, because I think that horse is probably one of the most talented horses in the world, and it can do dressage probably like nobody else in the competition, and show jump like a pure show jumper. The cross country, every now and then she has a blip. So it's going to be interesting to see if, they really are legit. I mean, it's won 3 5-stars, for God's sakes, but that's the one you're always like, well, you never know, right? But I think it's exciting to watch. Tom McEwen, he's been very successful at the Dublin horse, second at 2 5-stars. I mean, he's just, he's got developing a super partnership with it. Then there's, Michael Young. What can you say? I mean, the interesting thing is there's all the times we're like, oh, Michael's got this locked up, and then something happens. So I love the Olympics for that reason, because it just could be anybody's game on the day. I think there's the U.S. team. I think Boyd is, always shown. I don't know if he's going to win a medal, but he shows he goes and gives it his all every time. And I think you can really count on him. Will Coleman's had great success with the off-the-record horse. He won Aachen, the first U.S. rider to win Aachen, 2-3 years ago. Caroline, I'm not going to attempt her last name. It's Caroline Martin, as I know her. You know, she's younger and greener, but man, is she competitive, and it's quite a nice horse. I mean, she did win the gold medal at the Pan Ams last year on it. So, and, you know, then the New Zealand team, you've got Tim and Janelle Price, who doesn't really matter what they ride usually. You always got to count them in. I mean, they are tough, tough, tough competitors. Then, you know, there's always the interesting stories. We've got Austin O'Connor for Ireland, who won Maryland last year. You've got, as Kyle referenced earlier, Shane Rose, who is on the Australian team, who came back from a horrific injury this spring. I don't think anybody thought he would be here. And he has fought and determined. And, you know, he's riding his old partner that he's done, I don't even know how many championships on. So, you know, that's kind of fun. You got Chris Burton, who retired from eventing a few years ago to show jump, coming back into it now. And I mean, he is probably, in my mind, the best rider in the world. I don't know. It's kind of hard between him and Roz Cantor at the moment. But he can pretty much get on anything and go around. So you've got all of that. Kyle, you want to jump in and talk about who I'm forgetting?
It's because I've got the list and you don't. Very well done, by the way, because I would have been like, oh, I don't know. Well, first I'll cover, like, I will have the same sort of, like, the grouping that you just talked about, starting with Chris Burton. I think Jen's right. Like, easily one of the best riders in the world at any particular time. Took a 2-year hiatus to show jump pure. The thing with Chris is he's the fast. There's one thing that is absolutely for certain. He's the fastest rider in the world at any particular time. He's a very, very gifted dressage rider and show jumper, but he is the fastest rider in cross country. So it almost, like, it's just always almost a given when he goes out. And it doesn't make, like Roz Cantor, he doesn't make it look fast. They just go smooth and easy. And so if you want to emulate anybody, he's the one to emulate. And that horse, although it had been somewhat successful with his previous rider, he's only got it for this go around. Ben Hobday handed the horse over to him this year, and when it started, the dressage didn't look like it was going to be quite good enough, and then Chris did his magic and has just moved it right up. So that Shadow Man horse is unbelievably nice, and with Chris on it, it becomes a world-class competitor, and I don't think that would apply with everybody. Laura Collette, I think actually Jen is absolutely right. Obviously, it's 1, 3, 5 stars. It's nothing but legit. But is it as dependable? Like we talked about, there's only 3 spots. It's got to be dependable all the way through. And on cross country, the course being smaller and a little easier might actually work against them. At the World Championships, it had a stop, a little run out at a ridiculous, easy, narrow, because the course wasn't quite enough to get him to focus and hold on it. I'm going to guess that's not likely to happen again, because I'm going to guess she's going to be paranoid as hell about being, not getting it done. And she should be able to, that horse should be easily a winner of the competition. And I say that, and I can say that about the next probably 5 horses I'm going to mention. Roz Cantor, Lordship Garofalo is an incredible horse, incredible partnership. And watching Roz ride again, when she's doing this stuff, a little bit like Chris Burton, you're watching it, she goes super fast, and you're like, but it doesn't look like she's going fast. She just shows up on the scoreboard with the time. And interestingly enough, that horse is the only horse for the Brits that got a bye this spring. So she didn't do a 5-star this spring. She's been gearing that one up to this competition as the competition that she was a peak at. And I do think there's a huge advantage to that. There's always this debate on it, but I think you can only do so many big competitions in a year with a horse. They're athletes, and you just can't keep going to the well. So I think it gives her a major edge. And the horse is very good on the flat, and it's a super show jumper. So again, should be the winner. And then Todd McEwen comes in, and the same thing. He's had a couple blips on the record with the horse, but he's been knocking at the door. He's had those several seconds. And if you get second a few times, it often sets you up for a big win. And this probably is likely to be that big win. he says right before I'm going to Michael Young, who is, everybody would say, oh, well, there's the winner, but he as well, incredible on the flat, is probably the only horse that could compete head to head with Laura Collette's horse. But it's all a trade-off because it's not going to be that far. They're all going to be grouped quite closely together. Roz, Michael, Laura Collette, Chris Burton should be close. And then after that, any little, one mark on the, 1 point on cross country, all of a sudden you're behind, and now you've got to try to make it up. And the interesting thing with Michael Young is that horse is an incredible animal. It's been very successful with him. It was very successful with his previous rider. But it's got these blips at the wrong times. It had a fall at the Europeans last year. Is that right, Jen?
Yep.
At the water? Yep.
Yep.
Had a blip at Tokyo. Should have won that one. Had a frangible. And those blips have kept it, like, it's won big events, but those blips show up. And on that day, the blips are, you just can't have it. So any one of those horses has a good shot. Roz Cantor's, to me, is the most consistent of those with that partnership. So she gets the edge because she hasn't really had the blips with him that the other ones have had. She also, like Jen said, Laura Collette won 3 5-stars. So that's kind of nice. Tim and Janelle always show up, always put the effort in, and always are competitors. I think that their horses aren't going to be quite strong enough on the flat on the day. At the end of the week, I think Tim's horse actually can be in there this one, but it just doesn't seem to get the same level of the same low mark at the end of a weekend, I guess. It's an incredible horse, an incredible rider. My feeling is he'll be top 8. I don't feel he'll be in the top 3. And top 5 will be a scrape. Janelle will pull everything out, and she's one of the fastest riders in cross country in the world. If Chris wasn't in there, you'd say she's probably the fastest rider in the world here. And she's tough as nails, and that's a very good horse too. This one has been, I don't have my results up in front of me, but I feel like this one hasn't been as fast as some of her horses. And because I'm feeling like we're playing around with the top 8, top 10 with her, not the winner. Boyd is a performer. I think this is a super horse that will do a really good job there. I think it's really kind of the right place for it, because although it's been fairly fast, it's got a great backstory. I don't think it wants to run for 12 minutes fast. I think it wants to run for 10 minutes fast. It's done a 5-star and it's gone distance and everything, but with all the twisting and everything, I think it's going to be well suited for this. And then it's a very good show jumper. And I thought it was the right choice for this competition because it's also quite good on the flat. It's going to be hard for him to contend with those other riders, but I think he'll get a good performance. And that's when the rider goes to what a great horse to have and rider to have on the team, even if it's not the individual winner. Will Coleman, that horse has been very successful. Like Jen said, it won Aachen, first American horse and rider to do that. Will is an incredible rider. I think America's showing up slightly under horse because they lost Tammy Smith and My Bomb, and Will Coleman's other horse, Chin Tonic, which those two could have been in the grouping with the other horses as far as the dressage. Will's horses step back a little bit on the flat, and I think, maybe this time where he only has this horse to focus on, it will help it and improve it back to its former sort of level of the dressage. But either way, it's a jumper, and Will's an incredible rider, and it'll be a great team asset to have there. I'm thinking it's probably going to miss on the individual stuff, which is a shame because Will is a rider that you could really look to as a what you'd like to see as a, like when you watch Roz Cantor go, you watch Will go, and you're like, oh, so that's how you're supposed to do it, make it look easy. And then Caroline is an incredibly gifted rider. That horse is only, I think, 9 years old. That shouldn't probably matter as much because the cross-country level's down. The show jumping is very good on that horse. He's very good on the flat. It should be under 30. It'd be hard to see it in the top placings. But again, when you compile the three of them, if they all do their job, the team could be interesting for them. And the thing with Caroline is they're giving, which is a hard thing to do, like Jen said, in this situation, because you've only got 3 spots, they're giving a younger rider a shot. But when they gave her a shot at the Pan Ams, she stepped up. And that's the thing, is when you see them do it at the Pan Ams, then you feel confident with them. And that's, I think, why Liz got put down as a alternate rather than in the team spot, is that the Pan Ams, she had an edge over Caroline for sure. And the edge didn't happen. So Caroline moved herself into contention by showing up on the day. The French riders all can contend individually for being probably that, you know, 1 or 2 of them could be in the top 8. I don't know that we have a winner there unless they just have the weekend of their life, but they're incredibly good at showing up at the international stuff. And I know whenever there's a team competition in your home country, there's just more drive to be the, you know, the success that you're looking for. Kevin McNabb for Australia is an incredibly solid rider and competitor. And watching him this year, it looks to me like he's just building for a moment. And I suspect that this could be one of those moments. And that horse and him are capable of being close to the scores that some of the top grouping would be. And then he's just got to finish it off. And he's certainly capable of that. He's a beautiful rider, and that is a very good horse. I think Shane Rose's horse is just not quite in that same caliber, but a very good, solid horse to have to put the number on the board for the team. And then I just think that that grouping, and I'm sure there's a few that those are the ones that we sort of wrote down as outstanding. But I mean, when you look at it, there's 10 outstanding riders there. I mean, it could be anybody's day. It should be easy to say, well, we've got, it's going to be, the winner is going to be, Laura Collette, Roz Cantor, Tom McEwen, Michael Young, Chris Burton, Kevin McNabb, maybe. I think those guys are all showing up on horses that could win this whole thing, but it's so not that simple. And that's what makes it great. That's what's going to be so exciting about it, because it's not like you're like, oh, they've got it. But at Tokyo, going into that, I think everybody, including myself, was like, well, Michael Young's going to win that. And then who's going to be the next grouping? But it is still competition. And then, of course, he went out and had the frangible. And then the Europeans last year, like, oh, he's going to win that because it's only a 4-star. And then it tipped up coming away from the last water. And that's where consistency matters. And I think that's, to me, where Roz has a stronger edge than some of the other ones. So this is not picking I'll be happy to pick the medal stuff, but that's when I look at it, it's not. And the other thing is, guys, if you got a fan favorite here, and I'm totally all over that. Like if you're like, oh, I think Boyd's the best and Boyd's got it, or Caroline, I love the grittiness of the up and coming rider. And I know Caroline quite well, and I've watched her for years as a young rider. And when she was a young rider and she won Young Riders, I was like, there's no reason this girl can't go and do everything that she's doing now. So it's really cool to see that. I'm not sure this is her moment yet, but the one other thing is that as she wants it so badly, she might make a moment that might not be hers yet, if that makes sense. Like at the Pan Ams, she cantered. Like I messaged with her after the Pan Ams, and in show jumping, she literally cantered through a jump, made such a miss, and just took all the rails with her. And then some riders would have just completely fallen apart, and she just put it behind her and went on and finished. And she messaged me. I think I congratulated her, and she messaged back. She said, that was a swing and a miss, wasn't it? But like, she had a good humor, but I'm sure she didn't enjoy it. But you have to be able to shake it off. And that's where people like Boyd, Caroline's proven it. Michael Young's able to do it. Laura Collette, Chris Burton, those guys, Kevin McNabb, they're able to have a mistake and still stay in the competition. And then there's some other riders you're like, oh, they're really good, but they're just almost a bit too special. And some of those horses, and I, like I kind of feel like Laura Collette's horse is a bit that way. It's almost just a little too special that sometimes it doesn't know how to just be like, I got to get this shit done,
Totally. Okay, so we're almost here up on the hour. Do you guys want to give us your team and individual podium finishes? And Jen, you're gonna go first.
Okay, I'll go first on the team. Kyle might have to go first on the individual. Well, I mean, look, I have to go with Great Britain for the gold, which I think pretty much probably everybody in the world is. However, as we all know, I think in Tokyo, everybody expected Germany to be the gold and they didn't. So that's what I love, is that you can feel like, well, this is a no-brainer. And you know what? I might be wrong. But I am going to pick Great Britain for the gold. It does get a little trickier, I think, for the silver and bronze. I feel like Germany, because we did forget to mention Sandra Off on there, and she's, former world champion and unbelievably good. She had a little blip in her last outing with this horse, but I think it was a one-off. So I feel like Germany probably should be right up there for the silver. Their third rider, Christopher, I'm not going to pronounce his last name. He's very consistent with that horse. So I feel like I would put them in the silver. And then the bronze is hard. I feel like you could go down between, I think the US could pull out the bronze. I really do. I think Ireland's got a really good shot at the bronze. As Kyle keeps saying with France, I mean, the hometown favorite, it's hard to bet against them. I'm sure I'm forgetting, New Zealand, I feel like should be up there, but I'm just not quite certain their team will be as good as the other teams. It is going to be about consistency for that final spot. So I'm going to go with Great Britain, Germany, and then I'm just going to have to flip a coin between the US and Ireland, I think. So, Kyle.
Okay, well, so yeah, it's interesting because actually we didn't cover any of the riders from Ireland in the individuals, and you've got Austin O'Connor on a 5-star winner, Susie Berry on a horse that's done really well with her and been very competitive, and she's a very good rider. She's hot at the moment, and that's the other thing, is you're coming into these things and sometimes you're just coming in and it feels like it feels like work, and sometimes you're coming into them and it just feels like anything you do works out, and there's that has to play to your advantage. And that is, I think, also in a team competition where like someone like Boyd is very good about putting himself in a mental state and a physical state where he just gets the belief. And Caroline has done that as well. This is just a bigger phase of the same thing. Ooh, I think, am I still there? Can you hear me?
You still hear you.
Okay. Just lost one of these. Okay. So it's interesting that we, you've got such quality here, and we totally missed a whole country of good riders. So for me, yeah, Great Britain should win it. Germany should win it. I'm gonna go Great Britain because I just think they're that strong at the moment. And it's such a great competition because it's literally one of them goes out of the box and doesn't make it happen, and you've got a new team at the top of the podium. But I think Great Britain's got the best shot at the moment. Germany is obviously the same thing. They've got such a strong group there. But I'm going to go a little different, and I'm going to go Great Britain. And I'm going to pick the USA because I live here. And then I'm going to go France for the bronze medal because they just sort of show up at these things, like I said. And if it wasn't France, like I feel like Australia's got a shot in there as well. They could easily step in there. So I'm going to go for the bronze. You know what? For the bronze, I'm going with Australia instead of France. And if I was going to pick a dark horse to just show up in there, I think I'm going to go with Japan because I feel like they've got marks. I promise you, if you go through their record, there's marks there that could make that happen. And if they just stay on task, they usually on cross country are pretty good. They just need to let it go for 8 minutes. I think they can do that, or whatever it is. So I would say as a dark horse, Japan jumps in there and finally gets that team medal that they've been working for by buying good horses and putting their riders in the right situation. So it might be unlikely, but go Japan.
I love it. I love that you guys have different takes too, and we'll be sure to announce who's the winner between you two.
Well, you see, I want to choose different people completely. I want to go with a whole different team because I'm an underdog person.
That is.
Yeah, I support it. Underdogs are really fun to watch win. Okay, well, you guys, amazing. Do you guys want to pick podium finishes for individual too?
Yeah.
Okay, you start.
What the hell? Okay, well, so I'm going Roz Cantor. I mean, I just feel like she does everything and makes it look easy. That horse is amazing. She's got everything that you should want in a top rider. She's gritty. She knows how to deal with adversity. She's had to work on confidence issues, but because of that, she owns it more. She makes it look easy. But when it's not easy, she knows how to kind of work that out. That's a very good horse, and she's super fast. And because she has had such a consistent record with this horse, she deserves it. Not that some of these other riders don't, but I want that consistency. I want to be like, well, of course she did it. She had the right weekend. So I'm going to go Roz Cantor as my winner. I want to take Laura Collette as number 2, but I'm actually going to go with Chris Burton because I love the way Chris rides. I think he's got a chance. I think he legitimately has a shot there. He gets the right start to the weekend, and he's going to, I believe, make this all work. And when you watch those two ride, it's just, I mean, it's an education, and I love that. So I'm going to go with Chris Burton. Riley, my daughter, would love me to pick Tom McEwen next, I'm sure. But I'm going with Michael Young for the 3rd spot, which I know seems a little bit weird, but I just feel like there's a chance that a rail could fall and move him back a spot. So, and I don't want to. I just want to go there. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay, well, I have to agree with Kyle on the top. I think Roz Cantor really, I mean, she is incredible to watch her partnership with that horse. It's so smooth. They're so consistent. He seems so happy in his job. And she's trained him beautifully. So I really feel, unless something weird happens, she should come away with the gold. It gets a little harder for me on the next ones. I mean, yes, again, my daughter Riley would like me to pick Tom McEwen as well. So I'm going to make her happy and say I am going to put Tom McEwen in a medal position, but I'm just not sure where. And then I think I have to go with Michael Young for a medal as well. I'm going to say probably Michael for the silver. And I'm going to go with Tom McEwen, I think, as a sentimental choice for the bronze. You know, you could pick Laura Collette, you could pick Chris Burton. There's so many top riders you could pick, so it is really hard. So, but I'm going to go with Roz Cantor, Michael Young, and Tom McEwen.
Perfect.
I want to add one thing to that. Roz Cantor produced the Lordship Gruffalo horse, and Laura Collette produced her horse that she's got there. And that is the one thing that makes me actually really lean towards wanting to put Laura in that spot. And she probably has as good a chance as Roz at winning, but I love riders that have produced their horses. There's something, it just says so much about someone. And you know what, because I'm taking Michael Young off, I'm putting Laura Collette into that. I'm going to put her into silver and Chris Burton into 3rd. I can't, I know it might not be the smart way to do things, but I love that. I love people that ride their horses and train them. And if you watch Laura Collette on that horse, he is feral when he starts the season every single year. She posts it. She's quite willing to put it out there. he's leaping, lavating, running off, just being a complete jackass. And he's been like that his whole life. He's gotten more civilized, but she's trained and dug in there. She had a horrible fall years ago and is blind in one eye from it. She's still enthusiastic in doing it. And you know what? Because of that, you know what? She's earned it. I'm going with her on the podium for silver.
I think what makes the Olympics so exciting, and especially I think this year, is like there's such a depth of good riders that it really could end up being anyone. I think in the past, there's always been a clear favorite, and yes, maybe they win, maybe they don't. But I genuinely feel like this time it's going to make the competition so good because it could be any of the ones we're talking about, or there's probably 3 or 4 others that could come in and get it. So I'm just so excited to watch it all this time.
Me too. And for anybody who wants to tune in, it's being streamed on Peacock. I think that's pretty, if you're in the US, you watch it via Peacock. And it starts on Saturday, July 27th. So dressage is on Saturday, July 27th at 3:30 a.m. Eastern time. And then cross country is on the 28th. It starts at 4:30 a.m. Eastern time. And then show jumping for the team is on, for the team and the individual are on the 29th, but the team starts at 5 a.m. Eastern time and the individual starts at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. So we're all going to be waking up early, but it'll be worth it. And Kyle, I guess, will be there in person. So he will be waking up at very normal times, and we can't wait to live vicariously through you. And you guys, thank you so much for taking this time to just walk us through the competition. I'm even more excited than I was at the beginning of this to go and watch it, but really can't wait to look out for these pairs, and hopefully it's a great weekend for everybody.
Yeah, just doing this has created, like, I've got all this adrenaline running through my body right now. It's pretty crazy.
Me too. I know. I'm just like, wow, okay, it's really going on soon. And maybe Kyle will get to go in person. Maybe.
When I was talking to Mike Winter this morning about the whole thing, I was like, I'm so excited for you. He was sending me pictures yesterday of the clothes they have to wear that the Canadian team gave them, and they're pretty atrocious, which happens. And I said to him, I'm like, I was like, I'm really excited for you. And he was like, really? I'm not that excited at the moment. Because of course they've got all these nerves and I said, well, at least I wish I could have been there and been like, it's like so cool to be in a team scenario with friends and stuff like that. But I'm just so excited for these riders because when I look at the list, there's so many deserving athletes there. There might not feature as a medalist or anything like that, but you just want it to go well for them and everything. And I mean, not all of them. There's lots that I'm going to wish ill on the day.
Okay, that's a good note to end on. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much, Jen. I hope you make it back to Florida at some point this week. Yeah, so you have a good flight, and then Kyle, thanks. I hope you make it to Paris without any issues. And thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight, and we'll talk to you guys next week.